Welcome back, guys, to the channel. It's Weedle, your World of Tanks YouTuber with the best hair, and today I got a little bit of a different video. As I'm coming up to the end of my map guide series, I want to start experimenting with some new content, and I'm going to start showcasing some tanks that I believe have been overlooked. So I got this tank out of one of the loot boxes a few months back, and never paid it much attention because generally the opinion of the community was it wasn't all that good of a tank. And I started playing it, and I kind of realized I'm not sure what people are talking about. This is actually a pretty solid tank, and I'm going to go over some strengths on it, but let's talk about some of the weaknesses I've heard that may or may not be legitimate. The first one was mobility. People said it had bad mobility. Well, I slapped a turbo on it, and I'm going, 36 to 39 kilometers an hour on medium rough terrain. At tier 8, that's perfectly fine. It's not the fastest heavy, it's far from the slowest. You're able to keep up with most of your heavy tanks. I think the Skoda 56 does similar speed. It might get a little bit faster, but essentially you can keep up with the main tanks. So I don't think mobility is an issue. I would just drop the hardening, put a turbo on it. So what else do I recommend? Well, obviously a rammer, because the rammer is like the one piece that I don't think is negotiable on most tanks. The other one, it desperately needs a vertical stabilizer. So once you have that equipment on it, I think this thing is pretty versatile. Let's talk about some other things. Alpha damage 400, perfectly fine. It's not too low. It's not super impressive like the Skoda 56 or anything, or the BZ 176. But for your average run-of-the-mill tier 8 premium tank, that's not bad. Let's talk about the valid criticism, low DPM. With my setup with a bounty rammer and food, it's right at 1950. That's not really impressive, but do keep in mind when you factor a couple other things in with this tank, I don't consider it to be a problem. This tank is essentially you go to a position that's hold down or side scrape and you grind it out, and it does that job tremendously well. One of the things that allows it to do that is its penetration on its gun. So its base round has 248 millimeters of pin. To put that in perspective, the premium round on the Skoda 56 is 248. So this thing's standard ammunition has the penetration of the Skoda 56, which everyone thinks is an S tier tank, and I would agree with that. So let's talk about the premium pin on this. 294. Which blew me away. I did not know this thing had that kind of penetration on its premium rounds, because I never looked at it. So with 294 millimeters of pin, that's going to allow you to deal with a lot of tanks that normally might be an issue, like for instance, like you get into a tier 10 match. Sometimes it can be difficult to penetrate some of these tanks, but with 294 millimeters of pin, you could pretty much deal with tier 9s. You can deal with your tier 10 heavies when you do see them. Some tanks I don't think play up particularly well, and this is one of them I think plays up extremely well. So I do recommend this tank, because you're going to see tier 10s, and having a tank that can deal with it is good. From an armor standpoint, once this thing is hold down, I kind of put it in that tier of tanks. You might as well go somewhere else and not fight it. It's very difficult to deal with hold down. Even for a tier 10, there's essentially very little chance you're going to pin the face of this tank. You might pin the small upper area around the commander's hatch, but that is a difficult spot to hit. So, also has excellent gun depression. So from a ridgeline or a side scraping or hold down position with this tank, it's one of the best tier 8 premium tanks in the game, in my opinion, for that kind of situation. I would put this in probably an A tier for premium tanks at tier 8 heavies. It's not S tier. It's not a Skoda 56 or a BZ 176 or the Barask, but for what this tank is able to do, yeah, it's got all the tools. 4 minutes in the game, I got 3,200 damage, 3 kills. this would be a solid game. The one thing I would criticize is, it doesn't have the best dispersion. The gun can be derpy at times, but honestly, is someone going to tell me the Skoda 56 can't have a derpy gun? I know it's considered an S tier tank. Everyone thinks it's great. It is, but that gun is derpy too. So just like that Su-130 that raced across, with the APCR on this tank and the velocity of the rounds, um, yeah, that's it makes sniping at tanks at long ranges to be pretty easy, or easier. I'm up to 3,900 damage. Yeah, this thing I don't think is a bad tank. Uh, Honestly, if you're looking for something that's got some forgiveness to it and is still a solid tank, this would be an excellent one to pick up. I would not criticize anybody for playing this tank and thinking it was telling me it was good. Yeah, we're gonna fast forward here and let this battle finish and see how I end up with 4,300 damage, 3 kills, only 71 assists, but pretty much just dominated their whole team combined. It's telling me like a 7,300 win 8. Solid game. Let's take a look at on Tanks GG and see why else I think this tank is actually pretty good. Okay, so let's take a look at the armor profile. Yes, absolutely hold down beast. With 370, basically anything that's not a tier 10 TD is going to have trouble dealing with you. They're, it's basically an auto ricochet. So when this thing's hold down with 294 pin, you can pretty much deal with any tank in the game, and they're going to have quite a bit of trouble dealing with you. Even the upper plate here, you can see some auto ricochet angles here. The middle plate, you're going to need premium rounds to go through it, and there are tier 8 tanks that do not have 263 pin that are very popular to play. Mind you, Skoda 56. Here, the lower plate obviously can be pinned. That's fine. That's a weak spot in pretty much every tank. Here you're looking at basically auto ricochet, so it can side scrape very well. Let's talk about my setup. I'm going with a turbo, and we'll go with, I think, a vertical stabilizer is just a standard setup that I would pretty much use in any match. 1950 DPM. Yes, that's not great, but again, at tier 8, I think there's this give and take on qualities of tanks. There's few that are just all around good in everything they do. When you combine armor, penetration, and the ability just to kind of hang in the fight, I think this tank's very good. The dispersion, 0.37. That'll improve with the field mods a little bit, once you take this, but not a whole lot. Like I said, but in general, with heavy tanks, you're kind of brawling at fairly close ranges, so this doesn't end up being as big of a problem. If you're playing this tank properly, it's fine. Yeah, top speed 40 kilometers, has pretty good terrain resistances. Yeah, I think this is a solid tank. I would recommend picking this one up and giving it a shot. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to deal with on the battlefield once you get the hang of it. And hope this helps you out, guys. Look forward to looking at some of your comments on what y'all think of this tank. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good tank.